Welcome to Imperfect Asian. Bienvenue à Asiate Imparfaite. This episode is in English, I think. I'm your host, Laura Nam, and this is a podcast about being Asian Canadian. When I saw, pictures of your wedding and then you went horseback riding, I just felt like, wow, this looks right.
Mm-hmm. And yet I also have that European sophistication, right?
Oh, yes. Sophisticated is definitely something that's like a word that people use to describe you. Oh, you know that really sophisticated man that was at your house party,
Yes.
Laura? What was his name? Like, oh, Jimmy.
James, I go by James in my European character.
My guest today for the holiday episode is one of my top 5 people, Jimmy Ng, who's 36, of Chinese Cambodian origins and was born in Montreal. We grew up in the same neighborhood in the suburb of Montreal in Laval, and we've been friends for 22 years.
22 years, wow.
Hi, Jimmy.
Hi, Laura.
Thanks for coming.
It's a pleasure to be here, old buddy, old pal.
So you're here because we are really close, and we always spend at least a day together during the holidays. And, I think holidays in immigrant families are pretty kind of different or really different. So what do you remember about the holidays growing up?
Well, I think when I was a kid, it was certainly the gifts, because I think all families got into that part. And, it's the commercial aspect of a society, I guess. And so it certainly never was anything religious for me, nor was it anything that had to do with Christianity. I always associated Christmas with just Santa and getting gifts. And I think for my family, it was probably a way for them to sort of participate in the ritual of our society here by, participating in that as well. And so you had to behave extra well during the year to hopefully get a big gift
Did you believe in
the
Santa?
holidays. I think
I never believed in Santa, ever.
Yeah, you're too rational and clever.
I wanted to believe in Santa because I saw that
People
kind of
did.
the joy that it brought, I guess, and the little like, oh my God, Santa. But I never believed in him.
So then you didn't experience Santa withdrawal, I guess, when you realized that, when normal people, I guess, realize that Santa is maybe not a real thing. I'm saying maybe because maybe some kids are listening right now. So
yes, kids listen to this podcast.
Yes, there are doubts that have been raised as to Santa's whereabouts. So
So Santa's like Bigfoot.
Yes, I guess.
All right.
But no, and then a lot of it was family meals afterwards, just gatherings of family. And I remember, I think in my teens, at some point, my mom started to make turkey, which she had never done before.
What?
But yeah, I guess she just saw that that's what people seem to be doing. And it was probably like on sale and for like at the supermarket. And so at some point, she just went for it and started making turkeys on Christmas. And
what was the filling though? Was it something super Asian?
It definitely didn't feel like Asian, but it did feel very kind of like cosmopolitan progressive. Like, I guess like it was like, yeah, we're doing this too now, like everyone else, but we're doing it our own way. And it felt nice to actually have like turkey, I guess, and just something nice about it.
Oh, come on. Turkey is so dry.
With the sauce.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all about pairing with the sauce.
I remember, my holidays growing up was really boring. I mean, there was always one night that wasn't boring because when my parents got married, they lived in Park X, which is kind of an immigrant. It's a neighborhood in Montreal where there are a lot of new immigrants, and they got helped by the church there. And there was this specific family that qui nous a parrainé, literally in the Catholic sense. And like my parents got baptized. I got baptized through that church, and their godmothers and fathers are that family. And my godmother and my godfather are their kids. So we used to spend at least one Christmas night with them every year. And that's where I learned the North American Christmas traditions. And they were such like a loving, non-judgmental family. Like I really don't think that we had to get baptized. I think
Mm.
my parents just kind of wanted to be part of, you know, they were getting held by the church and
Right.
they could see what people were doing and they wanted to
Mm.
be part of that community, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, they're not the types of people that try to change your religion or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So we would spend like one night, either the 24th or the 25th, with that North American family.
Yeah.
And we lost touch a bit, but we are still in touch with them. And I guess they were a huge part of integration and
Mm.
feeling loved and accepted
Mm-hmm.
in Quebec society. But other than that, like I just remember being really bored
Mm.
because there was nothing on TV.
Hmm.
I mean, all the shows stopped. So I would just watch Ciné Cadeau, like
Yeah,
Astérix et
Syndicado
Obélix,
was
which was
awesome.
awesome,
Yeah.
and Die Hard. And I don't know what else would play. I don't know, Christmas movies would play.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes my parents would bring us to the movies on the 25th
Hmm.
because I think they kind of felt bad that we weren't really doing anything.
Hmm.
There was certainly a Christmas, like a family dinner or a family lunch at some point at my
Hmm.
grandma's place when she was still alive.
Hmm.
But yeah, I remember being really bored, and especially as a teenager,
Hmm.
and going, you know, people started doing house parties. Do you remember that?
Yeah, true. I think like later into high school, there was always someone whose parents were away for some reason, like maybe going out down south or something, and then some party got organized.
Well,
And
I remember going to a lot of Asian filled house parties
those,
on
yeah,
Christmas.
true. That's true. I've done a few of those as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, whoever had like the biggest house and wanted to show it off would just do like a Christmas party or something like that.
No, but with family or no, for me it was just like amongst teenagers because none of our families were doing anything and we would
Hmm.
just end up together in someone's basement
Hmm.
drinking alcohol or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I remember, I think when I was younger, like maybe pre or mid-teen, I definitely there were definitely some big Asian parties at someone's house where many families, probably cousins of cousins and friends of cousins, and they were like the houses were completely filled everywhere.
With like there was always
With
a group of adults playing cards.
Yeah, exactly. And all the children are running around everywhere together, like all over through each floor. I remember those for
Oh yeah.
a few times. Yeah.
We'd sit on the floor on
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Cambodian carpets and
Yep.
just eat on the floor. All the children would eat on the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was interesting.
Do you miss that?
Um,
Because
Good
those
question.
are really, I mean, I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, I think that in a way, like the word that comes to my mind when I think of that time is the word tribe. And I think that in a way when as a people, when you know, uprooted yourself and like, you know, crossed half the planet to resettle somewhere else, and then you're still struggling to make ends meet, to integrate into society, to make a life for yourself. I think there does come times when you need to just reconnect with your tribe, and I think that Christmas does serve that purpose for many immigrant family, maybe in the sense that of being able to come together because there's just this like time where the kids are off of school and you have off because, you know, it's a holiday. And I think those are probably the two ways that I've experienced Christmas, either when I was young, especially either these big parties with a bunch of Cambodian families, our Chinese families, and then other times it was really quiet. A few times I remember it was just at my mom's with my brother and me.
Mhm. We spent Christmas Day together a few times.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And one of the most memorable ones for me is I remember we texted each other on Christmas Day, early afternoon, and I think I was in my mid 20s, and we decided to go hiking in
Oh
the
yeah.
Adirondacks.
Hmm.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And by the time we got there, it was nighttime
Hmm.
and it had snowed that day, and it was really cold, but there was a full moon and clear
Hmm.
skies, and we just hiked
Yeah, and I remember
under
like
the
a
moonlight.
canned soup dinner or something on fire or something like that. But
Yeah, we had Chef Boyardee.
oh
We made
yeah,
a fire
yes,
and ate Chef Boyardee, and then we slept in your car.
yeah,
And it was like -10 or something. It was really cold.
yeah. That was nice.
Yeah.
I remember when we went for dim sum too.
So it's been a few years now that we have this tradition of going to dim sum together.
Mhm.
What's your version of how it started?
I think it started when I became aware that Jewish people were doing Chinese food on Christmas, and I was like, wait a minute, that's so awesome. And wait a minute, we should do that too.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that we were talking on the phone, and I don't know who said, like, hey, let's go out looking for Jews. Like, where do they go? Okay, that sounded really bad. In a good way. We're just like, we wonder where, you know,
I,
Jewish people go. Like, do they go to Chinatown? Do they like, are there like Jewish families eating dim sum on the 26th? And we just felt like, I remember just feeling like that idea was just really amazing to go into Chinatown and to just see like two communities
yeah,
getting together. I felt like that idea was just really nice and beautiful. You don't think about, Jewish people mixing with Asians. That's not like necessarily a natural thing to think about.
hmm,
And I just felt like it would be like amazing to see that happen, to see that
yeah.
interaction. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I remember like reading about it somewhere. I think it was like that was what was happening in New York, and then I felt the same emotions as you did, which is like a blend of like very positive amazement and heartwarming, because I think like food is a gateway to culture, to identity, and when you see other people eat the food of your culture, it definitely highlights and celebrates it. And so I think, yeah, there is something about that connection that also really warmed my heart. And yeah, it's just a really kind of.
Apparently, this is a fact, even amongst,
Oh yeah,
Montreal Jews.
I've
Like, apparently,
definitely
this is a
validated it
fact.
after, and yes, I've asked my Jewish friends afterwards, and
Mhm.
it's definitely something
Yep.
that's
But
done.
haven't seen any Jews in
Mm.
Chinatown.
I guess a lot
S-
of people, I think, order out also. It's more convenient, I guess. But
So, whoever's listening, if ever
yes,
you guys know,
what are the go-to Chinese restaurants for the Jewish community on Christmas?
yeah,
And we want to sit at the table and, well, I guess
we
not
just
break
want to go
bread,
to,
but
we
break
just want to,
noodles with you.
yeah, I think that would be an amazing experience.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I did some research at some point. I think it's the whole like not mixing milk and meat also that really made that happen very naturally, because Chinese cuisine usually doesn't mix meat and milk,
Well,
and
there's
the
no milk.
kosher way. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that explains part of it, but yeah,
Uh-huh. And
mhm,
because the restaurants are open on Christmas Day.
that also helps. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So when I was thinking about you, I realized that you were my first really significant role model.
Huh.
I remember that in my early 20s, once I was out of my parents' place and just figuring out who I wanted to be as an adult. And I think up until that point in my life, like I knew that I wasn't on the path that was necessarily for me.
Mhm.
And you were the person that I came to for that. And the reason why I came to you is because you you think outside of the box. And I felt like even today, when I have these kind of a bit crazy ideas that are not that crazy, that's just they sound crazy to some people and like but it's like even today when I have these little ideas of whatever adventure I want to get myself in, I only tell a couple of people and I tell you because I know that you're not going to respond with your own fears. You're going to be like, oh yeah, okay, like how do you get that? Like, you look for a way to make that happen.
Mhm.
And I guess in my early 20s, I was really inspired by just how different the decisions that you were making
Mm.
were. And
Mhm. Aw,
yeah.
thank you, Laura. Good thing this is a podcast, audio based, because you don't see me turning red, or rather orange, or whatever Asian people turn into when they're
We still
blushing.
turn red.
Okay.
It's not paint, it's pigment. You don't turn orange.
Hmm.
So I find that you always looked outside of that small community we were in, like
Mhm.
that you saw things in a big way,
Mm.
like in you're part of the world way, and not
Mm.
necessarily just, oh, I'm in this high school and I'm gonna be staying in this neighborhood and get
Mm.
married. You just where, how did you develop that? Where does that come from?
Well, thanks, Laura, and I'm really touched by what you just shared, and I want to mention that, and I appreciate and admire you a lot as well. So, to answer your question, I think that part of it was being very aware of my roots and origins, understanding how much my family went through to get to Canada and all the hardships that they went through to coming here as refugees. And I think one way to receive that kind of heritage is to say, well, statistically, my life is quite unlikely already. So, I don't have a lot to lose because my family has already went through and survived so much. So in a way, you could say that the bar was set very low in terms of expectations, because it's like just living and breathing here today is already a lot compared to what a lot of people went through in my family lineage, but also what a lot of people are going through every day today. And so I think when you lower the bar in that way, it forces you to be very humble, to have gratitude. And I mean, this is obviously talking with hindsight. I was probably winging it along the way back then. But looking back today, some of it was that. Some of it was also growing up with a mom that was a single mom, and who, although she went through all her hardships, still also had to struggle here in Canada. And I saw all the sacrifices that she made. And I think that always kind of forced me to channel the same kind of strength that she had, but within my own circumstances, which was growing up in the suburbs and trying to figure out life.
I think most people that are listening are actually around Montreal, but it was a good neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
At
Oh,
our
yeah.
school, it was medium, low class people.
Mm-hmm.
It was mostly white, but there were BIPOCs.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, we were lucky in that sense of having like quite a lot of French Canadians, but then also people with mixed backgrounds who were half French Canadian and something else. A lot of Italians, I think, because we were in
Hmm.
Rimont. And I think that made a very rich, kind of diverse sort of social entourage to grow up with. And it really, in my case, prepared me for the world, because I got to travel a lot after and work internationally. And I think that it made it a very native language for me to navigate through cultures.
When you say that you've traveled a lot,
Mm-hmm.
okay, it's not like you haven't traveled a lot in the normal sense.
Mm.
I mean, you've traveled a lot through giving conferences for UNESCO
I work with UNESCO, and yeah,
and what was Save the Children? No,
Free the
Free the
Children, yeah,
Children.
Free the Children, and a bit with the
So
Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie,
you traveled through
civic engagement a lot,
civic
and yeah.
engagement.
Mm.
You took your motorcycle and rode it all the way down to Ushuaia, which is the most southern part of, I think, the world before
Mhm.
uh,
Antarctica.
Antarctica.
Mhm.
Antarctica. I mean,
Yeah, that's my
that
modest call to fame within our circles.
I mean, no, that's a huge deal, Jimmy. You took your motorcycle and drove from Montreal to Ushuaia.
Mhm.
You know, some people don't even dare to dream that big.
Mhm.
And I think that for me, like it took a lot, it took
Mhm.
some time for me to
Mhm.
dare to dream big because I
Mhm.
didn't necessarily feel like, you know, how I processed whatever my family had gone through. It was
Mhm.
just like I shouldn't expect much of the world
Mhm.
in a way.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I think that to reconnect with what I think you said earlier also is for me, I realized with hearing you, listening to you, that in a way, dreaming big for people with our types of backgrounds, like not having roots from Canada and with families that are culturally quite different from some of the norms here, to a certain extent, dreaming big for us is dreaming differently. It's about not necessarily following the path that is oftentimes set for us, either by our families or by the expectations of societies, because like, oh, we're Asian, so we're supposed to, go and become pharmacists or um,
Hmm.
something like that.
Shout out to all the Asian pharmacists.
We love you.
Thank you.
Um, I think a lot of it is just related to human development in general, like whether we're immigrants or not, whether we're a visible minority or not. I think like the challenge of humanity in our day and age is how do you develop yourself as a human from inside, from what your essence, what your nature is. And I think that perhaps when your family has went through a lot of trauma and has went through a lot of hardships, it puts things in perspective. And for me, I think it's always been a what do I have to lose approach, and not just like channeling fear at that moment, but really being as rational as possible about, okay, what do I really have to lose, and
Hmm.
not just letting only my fear speak,
Right.
but really also letting my gratitude speak and say, well, look, here are a list of things that you can take for granted. Like, I know that my friends are not going to bail on me because I failed at something. I know that my family's not going to bail on me because I wasn't able to drive my motorcycle across the continent. I also know that being educated, I'm able to find a job even if I quit the one I have right now. So I think a lot of how I've approached what I have to lose is by focusing on what I can't lose. And that's what always drove me to not just think outside the box, but to get outside of the box and to create my own path. And if that can resonate with other people, I'm certainly happy about that.
Actually, I really like what you just said because I'm a really
Mhm.
rational person as well, despite my really
Yeah.
creative and a bit crazy side. And I think that sometimes I've been told that things look easy for me,
Hmm.
and they're really not. And the people who say that to me, they do tell me, they say, I
Hmm.
know that it's not.
Hmm.
I know that it's not easy and that you've been through a lot of shit, but whether it's, you know, building my career or like, oh, doing this podcast or
Hmm.
whatever, you know, I get shit done. And so sometimes people look at whatever I've done in my life and they feel like, oh, it looks easy for her.
Hmm.
And I like what you just said because it's not easy. It's just that I am very rational about it as well. And, you know,
Well, and I think you're very courageous, because I think one of the qualities that you have, Laura, and I've known you for many years, is that you have courage with a capital C. And whether it's about an idea that or an opinion that you have, or whether it's about a place that you want to travel to or a thing you want to do, I think what does set you apart from a lot of people I know is the courage factor, and that perhaps the way you process your rationality is that at the end of the day you also pair it with courage, and that's the game changer. That's what makes the difference between contemplating and actually doing it.
thanks.
Mhm.
Whatever. I also I'm not that scared of humiliation, and I don't need, to outperform anyone. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my friendships are so strong,
Mm-hmm.
whatever happens, like I kind of know that I have the support system to deal with the consequence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I really don't take for granted. That I think about a lot, actually. That takes a lot of space in my mind. How am I treating the people that I work for? How am I treating the people that work for me?
Mm-hmm.
To How do I create this little community around me at work, even if I freelance and I'm all over the place? And when I was seeing a shrink in my early 20s, she also helped me create like a stronger community with my friends. She told me to open up to my friends, taught me to ask for help. And so in a way, I know that my support system is so strong that even if I fail at anything, like it really
Yeah.
doesn't matter, because that support is
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
and that's really all that matters.
Mm-hmm.
I also don't have that ego that's attached to failure.
Mm-hmm.
My ego is attached to the relationships that I have with my friends, with other human beings. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, there are relationships that I need to work on. Like, I'm not perfect, but
Mm-hmm.
some of the relationships that I have are so strong, like with
Yeah.
you and with Emmanuel,
Mm-hmm.
Nidia, Jerry. No matter what happens, no matter what I fail at, it really doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that reminds me of a talk I had with some of my students a few weeks ago about mindset. And very simply said, for me, it does come down to whether we show up in life with a, I guess, like a scarcity mindset or an abundance mindset. And another way that that shows up is whether our relationships are transactional or transformational. And in the sense that, is it a zero sum game and the more you have, the less I have? Or is it that when we come together, we have a multiplying effect? And I think the way that that shows up in my relations is that it's through collective resilience,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that when I have a support network that I trust and believe in, it makes me more resilient. And even though that resilience may show up through my individuality, it is made possible through the fact that I have people around me who I know I can count on if shit hits the fan.
Mm-hmm.
They'll help me clean up.
Not if, when shit hits the
When
fan.
shit hits the fan. Yeah, exactly. And you're definitely one of my close resilience task force members,
Ooh.
where I know that I can count on you. I mean, I remember that time when I had an accident, motorcycle accident in northern Quebec, and you literally called me up and, hey, do you need me to pick you up? And you drove like 8 hours or something like that on a whim to come rescue me. And that was like awesome. And I didn't even have to ask, because you just like, it was just a reflex for you. And so for me, that certainly is a big part of it.
Yeah, it just felt like, yeah, I'm free, and Jimmy just had a motorcycle accident. And I remember calling you because, I mean, and also you were gonna motorcycle through Canada,
Mm.
and you were gonna do that for what, 8 months? And you were like at the beginning of your trip, and you got into that accident. So
2 months and 10,000 kilometers.
right. So I also felt kind of, a bit heartbroken for you, because it was ending that way. And so apart from the fact that you needed to get back home, I just wanted to be there for you. Like, I didn't want you to go through that
Mm.
by yourself.
Mm. Aw.
Yeah, I find that our society doesn't value friendships that much, like,
Yeah, it's kind of like, I think it's often experienced as a placeholder, like until or while I find a romantic relationship,
yeah.
like let's have some friends fill that space. And then I think for a lot of people, it's hard to hold both. And that's probably part of the part of the reasons are probably related to the kind of pressures that people go through today in our societies, whether it's our work routines and what we choose to prioritize. Um, but that does feel like it's a barrier, I think, for a lot of people to not just be there for their friends, but be there with themselves. Because I think you grow a lot when you allow yourself to connect, be vulnerable, and depend on friends.
Yeah. Yeah, and I find, for friendships, if someone gets on our nerves, we just go, whatever, I'm just gonna see them less. Right?
Yeah.
Like everything that basically we learn in romantic relationships,
Mm.
we can those are things that we can apply to friendships, no?
Yeah, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we've gone through a lot together.
hmm
And yeah, thanks.
Thank you. And I know that, I mean, for me, you're halfway between a sister and a friend. Like, I think you have a special status because both of how far back we go. But I also realize that I think we share a lot of similar values, but we're also very different in our personality types, let's say. And I think that has been extremely rich for my personal growth. And I've learned to see and understand things differently, both because we're different in terms of types, but also because of your experience as a woman growing up in the society we're in, and not just growing up, but trying to thrive through it. And I think that a lot of the struggles that you've shared with me have oftentimes transformed my perspective and understanding of things that I took for granted, and in ways that weren't always easy, but that I've definitely come to appreciate very much.
I'm not crying, I'm just
It's just a
just
tear break.
yeah, I'm just cutting onions for my stir fry.
Yes.
Just cooking right now.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, life is hard. Speaking of hard times, uh, the past 2 years for both of us have been really difficult. Probably like the most difficult of our lives individually.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that got you through it, that got us through it, is each other. But for you, you were obsessing over Andrew Yang.
Yang Yang.
Can you talk to us about Andrew Yang?
Yeah. So Andrew Yang, for those who follow U.S. politics, was a
No,
Asian.
more energy, man. You love Andrew Yang. You don't need to.
Andrew
Come
Yang.
on, yeah.
All right. So
No,
Andrew Yang.
Yang, come on.
Andrew Yang was this Asian American candidate for the U.S. elections, Democratic presidential elections, and he went on a few podcasts. That's how I discovered him. And I was so excited for him because here was a model of Asian American that not only fit in some kind of stereotypes as being, but that was actually involved in politics. Just say.
I mean, he was in the Obama administration.
Yeah, he had been nominated for a position, for a title, but more. I mean, for me, it was just his mind and how he was both very smart intellectually, but he was also very smart emotionally, and listening to him talk and just channel both ideas, but also empathy, compassion, and he blended those together in a way that was just very, very inspiring for me, and I definitely spent way too much time listening to every.
You obsessed over
it. Might have.
But it was it wasn't an unhealthy obsession, but you totally a fan.
Oh yeah, Yang Yang all the way, for
yeah.
those who know about Andrew Yang.
What I really love about Andrew Yang is, yes, I mean, the content of what he's saying, but other than that, he's so cool.
Yeah, but like not dorky cool, but actual just like
Like
Clever, cool.
clever, cool, he'll dance.
Mhm.
He's able to connect with people, he's able to connect with really conservative people. He's
Mhm.
able to connect with young people, with BIPOCs.
Mhm.
He's just
Yeah.
he seems like he's having fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I find like when I look at him, I feel like this is how working should be.
Mm.
Working should be fun. And
Mhm.
that's what I like about Andrew Yang.
Yeah. Mhm.
There's like a lightness to what he's doing, but what
Yeah.
he's doing is really not easy. It's really
Yeah.
not, it's extremely serious.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. And it does inspire me too to show up in a similar way where I show up, which is always holding your hand out with your heart. Like, I think it's about that idea that of always being emotionally awake. I think that oftentimes we let our brains or intellect do all the processing, especially when it comes to professional elements, and we forget that we're, as human beings, our emotions are a big part of how we show up to the world and how we connect with people. And I think you need to be really in touch with yourself to do it in a way that feels authentic and genuine, because I think it's easy to try to do it, but I think we would all benefit from checking in with each other more
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. And you realize that we're both of us are overachieving Asians, right?
Shocker. Revelation. Oh no. Well, I mean, that's interesting, Laura, because that's definitely how I think I've felt these last years, where there's a question of how much is enough, and I
Mhm.
think that's why I came back to Montreal more permanently these last few years, and that's why I chose to work in a high school now, because at some point, what I realized, also connecting back um, to my family and my lineage, is that scarcity mindset, of feeling that you always need more security, more
Mhm.
resources, and then at some point you realize, no, we need to break away from that mindset of not having enough.
Mhm. Like,
And
yes,
Mhm.
our family has gone through real scarcity,
Mhm.
real poverty, but
Yeah. Mhm.
and so there's like this work ethic that comes to get out of that,
Yeah.
but then like you don't need to like
Yeah.
overdo it either. And sometimes I find it, so I think it's that cycle that it's hard to get out of sometimes.
Totally. Yeah, and I think it's deeply linked with trauma as well, where I mean, there's more and more acknowledgement of the concept of intergenerational trauma, and I think that it may be less obvious when it comes to Asian immigrant families, because Asian immigrant families don't talk a lot. Our parents don't have the habit of talking a lot about what they went through, I think. And so I think the price of that is that we may not get the amount of high resolution into their traumas that could be very hard to carry. But there's also a lot of unspoken things that are hard to process as long as they're not spoken. And I think that part of indeed what may have made us extra performant was inheriting these mental schemes of we need to really perform in order to make it. And I think that part of how we reground in a more healthy way is practicing gratitude and acknowledging that we in many respects have more than we need. And when we're able to convert that, not just in a I'm thinking about it now because I'm thinking about it, but like having that guide our life choices, I think that that's where we can learn, as I'm learning right now, how to slow down, and that sometimes less is more, and reframing things as to how can I serve in the world rather than only how can I
Survive or
survive. And
thrive or
yeah, exactly.
but it's something you just said makes me think of how we have both struggled with processing negative situations. And I'm not talking about extreme negative, I'm
Mm-hmm.
just talking about shitty,
Mm-hmm.
just like work or life situations. And I know for me, okay, random example that has doesn't necessarily happen, but if I have a big workload at work, like everyone else, but one person voices it and I don't voice it because I'm just like, I'm just going to deal with it, whatever. If ever there's a resource that gets pulled, they're going to be given to the other person.
Because they signaled it.
Because they signal it and they say, hey, this is fucking hard. Like, I'm doing a lot and what the hell? Like, I'm tired and I'm not able to do it. And they just, the resources are pulled for that person to shut up in a way, or to either help them. And sometimes it's just for that person to shut up. But it's like the fact that I didn't voice it and admit that it was affecting me negatively made it seem like I wasn't going through the same hardship.
Right. Totally.
So there's also that balance where
That's
like I found
point.
that like that we go way too far in the I feel grateful, I'm in a safe place, I'm not in danger.
Yeah.
My parents survived extreme shit, so I'm not gonna be whiny about this little thing. But the fact is that we're in a society where those extreme things don't happen. And I kind of need to be a bit whiny and vocal about how to deal with everyday situations, or else I'm just gonna get stepped on, or I'm not putting boundaries, I'm accepting too much from other people. And I think that's something that people from the Asian community, or people that have refugee parents, struggle a lot with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of how refugee families show up here is having experienced isolation and even betrayal. I think like their governments clearly didn't do a good job, and I think a lot of people in Vietnam and Cambodia also had people betraying them by
neighbors. Neighbors betraying them.
Exactly. Like, and so I think that kind of trauma shows up in a way where you're taught to basically just count on yourself and not to trust others,
and on your blood family.
Yeah, exactly. And so that puts a lot of pressure when you're trying to figure out life in a society that depends a lot on having a broad connections, let's say. And I think also that there is something about how we practice gratitude, and I think that it's often perhaps practiced in a very individualistic way. And I think the goal is not so much to say, well, I should be have gratitude for what I have, but rather using the word we, like we should have gratitude for what we have received and for what we provide for each other. And I think that that's a much more powerful way to practice gratitude. But we're in a society where it's hard to even start with the I, and it's more of a I don't have enough, or I need this, or I want that. And so I think that it's about finding that balance between I gratitude and we gratitude, and in a way that I have gratitude for my friend Laura, who's awesome. I have a lot of gratitude for a lot of things that have nothing to do with my work. It's just yeah.
You helped me a lot with my self-esteem. I would say, yeah.
Likewise.
What do you love the most about yourself?
My sense of humor.
You haven't cracked that many jokes, actually. You've been really serious in the past hour.
It's true. I guess the subject is a bit more serious, and I guess humor sometimes is a way to lighten up the situation or to deflect. And so I like to think that I haven't deflected from the subject by resorting to my sense of humor, my great sense of humor. But I mean, I think sense of humor, but I think
we have a lot of fun together. We laugh a lot.
Yeah.
We have really serious conversations, but we also laugh a lot.
Yeah, I think like a lightheartedness, like you can have a strong heart, but that's light at the same time. So I like to think that I have a strong but light heart.
Oh.
Self-love.
Jimmy being corny.
What about you, Laura? What's your greatest quality?
How dare you throw that question back at me? Yeah, I really like I think my sense of humor as well, I think is a good one.
Mm.
And the fact that people open up to me quite easily.
Yeah, you're a great listener.
And it's not even, through the podcast project or anything. That's always
Hmm.
it's been like that for
Hmm.
it's been like that for a long time. And some of the best compliments that I've had were always in the realms of, wow, I can really be myself when I'm with you.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that's what I like the most about myself, that people are able to open up to me quite easily.
Hmm.
What would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Whoa. What would I tell my 18-year-old self? Dang. I would say probably just like enjoy the journey. Yeah, just enjoy the journey. That's what I'm still doing.
Are you planning on watching anything for Christmas? Any Christmas movies?
I'm looking forward to watching snow. I feel like I'm missing snow these days, and I want to see like that puffy snow that dances, because we're in quarantine a lot these days, right? Well, in home at home because of this pandemic. I think that there's also an opportunity to be émerveillé by nature, and I think we often take snow. I wouldn't say it's for granted necessarily, but it's something you need to go through in order to get to work, sort of.
I actually
And
like shoveling. I don't have a car anymore, but I like shoveling my car after
yeah,
it snows.
I don't know. There's something energetically fascinating to me about snow. It's like a very intimate way of interacting with nature, and you can both contemplate it, you can fall because of it if it's ice, and you can have to like push it around. So in a way, it's kind of like it's kind of real.
So poetic.
Yeah.
I was like, just like, oh, I'm probably gonna watch Die Hard, the one that's like in the hotel, like the one at the airport. And you like, you go, I'm gonna watch snow.
Yes.
I'm binge watching all the Die Hards. Yeah, thanks.
It was a pleasure. It was fun. You're doing great, Laura. This has been really enjoyable.
I want to say thanks for spending time with Jimmy and I. Thanks for spending time listening to me talk to people. And don't hesitate to reach out. Emmanuel and I love hearing from you and getting suggestions or feelings or feedback. It just makes us feel like people are listening and that we're doing something useful. Because sometimes it does feel like I'm just doing this for myself, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it feels nice to feel useful. Thank you to Emmanuel Hessler for creating the podcast with me and just being an overall amazing friend. Not the same level as Jimmy, in a different, as intense level, though. I'm always crying with Emmanuel and snotting on him. Yeah. So thank you for receiving my snot gratefully on your t-shirt like every time we see each other. Thank you Shitakon Bakam for the sound design. Thank you Brian B. Young for the visuals. And yeah, happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye Jimmy.
Bye, Laura.
You can sing and sing.
Bye, bye, bye.